Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Just Saying Football with Jack and Sean. I'm your host, Sean Gannon, alongside my partner, Jack and Nicholas. We're here to bring you news, notes, weekly updates, and game analysis of your favorite teams from around the league. If you don't have the chance, go check out our website, justsayingfootball.com. Follow us on Instagram at JustSaying, no GWJS for article and video updates. And don't forget to get us in your ears on Spotify at Just Saying Football. It is week 2. Week 1 is in the books.
Yep.
Obviously, some injury news. You want to tell the people if they somehow don't already know about this?
Yeah, obviously, if you didn't see Monday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers, 4 snaps and a torn Achilles, and his Jets season is done, 38 years old. Not what anybody was expecting going into the night. Despite the Jets getting the win, obviously a huge loss there. What else did I miss there, Shanzi?
We just had 2 brutal losses for our teams. I was surprised to see the Vikings lose to the Buccaneers in that fashion, and then obviously the New York Giants.
Yeah, I was there seeing it, watched it. Didn't need to see much more. It was a blowout in every sense of the game. But like you said, some very crazy upsets last week, including Seattle, the Rams, kind of coming out of nowhere. This week we got some great action for you. Last week, we went in a little more speculative. Now we have a 1-week sample size, so we really got a good look at these teams.
We're going to get into the thick of it soon, but let's jump right into our blowout games where we agree on every single one of these ones this week. Let's kick this right off with the Chargers taking on the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. LA is currently favored in this one by -3, over-under here of 45.5. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so obviously Chargers did not get the win last week, but Miami, you couldn't stop them. But this week, it's more of a stagnant offense with Tennessee. You expect the Chargers to continue to run on the ground. Last week, 40 attempts on the ground, 234 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm expecting them to kind of beat Tennessee at their own game this week. Take the spread on LA, no problem.
Yeah, I like the spread on this one as well. I just think that the Chargers have a little bit more to prove on defense. They're going to show up in this one. The Titans had 3 turnovers last week. Their offensive passing was not quite there at all. Yeah, obviously, Derrick Henry, you can start him in fantasy. He'll probably have a big day. Moving this right along, we have the Las Vegas Raiders making their way to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Buffalo is favored in this one in the largest spread of the week at -9.5. Over in here, 47.5. What are your thoughts? Obviously, the tough loss for Buffalo on Monday.
Yeah, now they're at home, and the Raiders got to travel all the way from Las Vegas. I think that's definitely a huge advantage. Buffalo, obviously, a little bit of a shorter week, but Vegas got the win last week. Technically, they're ahead in the AFC West, but I will say Buffalo, a lot of mistakes, and when Josh Allen makes mistakes, he usually has a nice bounce-back game. I am weary about that spread, but I will say I like the Jacobs over 75 rush yards. Buffalo's defense let Dalvin and Brees run all over them last week.
Yeah, I'm worried about the spread as well. I thought the Raiders kind of surprised last week a little bit. I'm definitely going Buffalo, though, of course. I do think they're going to have a huge comeback. I also think the 75.5 spread. I think that if the Raiders get back to this run game, get Josh Jacobs a little bit more involved. They weren't super efficient last week. Could really help Jimmy Garoppolo settle down and then get Devontae open a little bit more. Granted, he was pretty open last week. Got the touchdown and stuff. But that will really help him out. Anyway, keeping this moving along, your New York Giants making their way to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Giants favored this one by -5.5. Over under here of 39.5. I'm so sorry. What are your thoughts? The Giants obviously had the rough 40-0 loss.
Yeah, obviously, they're expected to win in this one just off the fact that Arizona is probably not favored in any of their games this entire season. The Giants have a chance here to really make a statement against Arizona. They are, traveling across the country there. I don't know about that spread just yet, but I think this is the perfect opportunity for kind of what I expected last week for the Giants defense to step up. I like the Giants to win in this one, obviously.
Yeah, I think Giants defense, sneaky start in fantasy potentially. We saw that the Cardinals didn't move the ball too well against Washington. They got the defensive touchdown, which made the scoreboard look a little bit better. I also expect that the Giants will bounce back huge on defense. Wink Martindale was not accepting the performance last week. We know that for sure. And with Joshua Dobbs, you just saw they were not moving the ball very well. He signed in there late. He's only been in the building for about 2 weeks now, coming on like 2.5 weeks, so it still kind of makes sense. Zach Ertz, a ton of targets, just something to keep in mind. Moving this right along, we have the 2 best secondaries, arguably, in the NFL, with the New York Jets making their way to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Dallas is favored in this one, -9, over under here, 39.5. Both teams coming off of primetime games. How are you feeling?
Yeah, and obviously both teams coming with wins, like you said. It's really interesting to see how these teams are going to kind of respond. Will Dallas be able to keep that momentum from the blowout last week, and how is Zach Wilson really going to be able to kind of respond? Obviously Garrett Wilson, versus Trayvon Diggs, that's going to be a prime matchup to watch this weekend, and definitely a determining factor to see if the Jets can get moving.
Yeah, absolutely. I said it last week, and I'll say it again. When Zach Wilson is in, it just seems like they get all these turnovers, and then they don't do much with it. We saw it last week. They'll probably manage a turnover or two here for sure. This defense is fantastic.
Yeah.
Will they capitalize on it? I don't know. We got a lot more to see from Zach Wilson, obviously, and we've heard that they're exploring different quarterback options. What that is, we have no idea. It's all just speculative right now. I do think CD gets more yards, though, than Garrett Wilson.
I like that. I like that.
Sure.
I will also say, looking at some sack props for this one, the Jets' offensive line did not look as good as their defensive line.
Yeah, and the Dallas Cowboys defensive line was fantastic.
Fantastic.
Hit that one for sure. All right, let's move this along into our mad games. We're going to disagree with a few of these. Starting right off the bat with the Washington Commanders making their way to Denver to take on the Broncos. Denver favoring this one by -3.5. Over under here of 39.5. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, obviously, Washington came out last week. Brian Robinson is obviously, number one running back. We didn't know if it was going to be a committee with him and Gibson, but it is definitely his team. I will say I like the Commanders in this one. Last week, I didn't really have any idea how there was a difference in the Sean Payton offense. I didn't think he was the one running it.
It was just an imitation of exactly what last year was. They picked right up from week 18. It seemed like I'm going with the Broncos in this one, though. The defense for sure is solid. They will not let people score on them. They'll let you score like 16 points, and that's a great place for a defense to be hovering at. Mm-hmm. And now they have a really favorable team, I think, in this one against the Commanders, considering that it's Howell's second career game start, only in his second year. Yeah. He played okay, 61.3% of his completions, 202, 1 for 1. He did score one on the ground as well.
True.
But that was against the Cardinals. We saw they struggled. That was also at home. Now it's his first away game. So for me, I'm going with Denver in this one. I think that if Jerry Jeudy's able to be in this one, he's coming back from the hamstring injury, it will only help his offense even more.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy wouldn't start him this week, but it's definitely interesting to see. I like Denver's at home, so I get that too. Their defense plays amazing at home. So we'll see who wins that. We're opposing on that one.
I know. All right, keep us moving right along with the Green Bay Packers making their way to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Green Bay is favored in this one by -1.5. Over under here 40.5. Resurgence for the defense of Green Bay for sure last week. I'm sure everyone loved that, especially against the Bears. What are your thoughts? So you love the Falcons.
I do love the Falcons this season. I love Bijan Robinson. I wish Desmond Ridder was able to throw to Drake London and Kyle Pitts a little bit more, but I will say they looked fantastic last week. Both 15-plus touches and 75 yards and combined 3 touchdowns between Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. I remember last year, they just had Algier, and it was like, oh, he needed this partner. Now together they look unstoppable. Packers defense, like you said, definitely going to be a test. I am leaning towards the Falcons at home. I like them kind of as the underdogs in this one, but I will give Jordan Love his flowers. He showed up last week, and it wasn't just because the Bears are not that good. It is because he was there. He's ready. He's in his third year, so you got to respect that he's sat and waited his time.
Yep, and Aaron Jones, 2 touchdown performance. When you have him going, that offense just seems to be running all the more efficient. I'm going with Green Bay in this one. Ridder, we saw last week, 50 for 18, 115 yards, played this game manager role. We know that the Arthur Smith offense, they're going to run the ball when they're winning, run the ball when they're losing, run the ball no matter what's happening in the game. So this is a great secondary right now. The Green Bay, I don't expect them to pass a lot. I'd sit Drake London, probably sit Kyle Pitts as well, truthfully. If it's not Bijan or Tyler Algier, as we just learned, probably not going to start them in fantasy. I do think Green Bay walks away with the win. And also hit the under on the 40.5. I don't think it'll be a high scoring game. I think this could be like a 25 to 7-13 kind of win.
Interesting. So, that 40.5, it makes me think, how is Atlanta, going to be kind of supporting that? Like you said, if they have to wind up passing from being down, are they actually going to be able to kind of repeat what they were able to do last week? I do. For me, I like the over. So, I'm kind of opposing here too. I think that both of these teams, I think Atlanta's defense is good, but the Packers are one of those teams where they could definitely expose the weaknesses, and I think they could kind of keep it closer than we think.
All right, I like it. Let's keep this moving along with the Chicago Bears making their way to Tampa Bay. Oh, they hurt me. take on the Buccaneers.
Too soon.
Too soon. Tampa Bay favored them, so I'm -2.5. Over under here at 41.5. I'm going with Tampa Bay right off the bat. The Bears are still playing like the Bears. It's not the huge MVP leap that we've been hearing about all offseason.
Yeah.
Granted, there's still a ton more games for Justin Fields to bounce back. I just don't know if it's going to be the game. Buccaneers, granted, they gave up a ton of yards to Justin Jefferson. It was all in the first half. They shut him down in the second half. They walked away with the win because their defense, just clamped down on us. And I think that they could do this against Justin Fields.
I think they can do that. What Sean was saying to me off camera is that Tampa Bay did a good job exposing the interior offensive line of the Vikings, stopping the run game. That is really where Chicago has their weaknesses, and they try to use their strengths with the run game. So I think this is
so bad.
A silver platter kind of for Tampa. We didn't expect Tampa to be good, but I have to say after the win last week, favorable game week 2, it wouldn't shock me if they wind up being 2-0. I'm going to go with you on that. I like them. They're favored at 2.5. Usually I say 2.5. Nobody has any idea what's going to happen. But, I think Mayfield, I will say, he looks a lot more poised in this offense than he kind of looked in any of the last couple teams he's been popping around.
That's for sure. Minus the one drive with the Rams last year.
Minus
that.
Like immortalized.
Yeah, that's the only things he had going on. All right, moving this along. We have an AFC North matchup. It should be a good one. Baltimore Ravens making their way to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Cincinnati's favored in this one by -3.5. Over under here of 46.5. We did not get to see this game last year with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Lamar Jackson missed both these games last year with these injuries, so be a good fun time, I think, this game.
Yeah, I think both of these these are two of the young great quarterbacks. Both of them just got paid this offseason. We know they're going to be matching up twice a year for the next 5 years at least. So what I think, it starts here with, we're looking at these guys this is the seasons. Both of them have their money, their weapons, their teams are looking good. It's time for one of them to show which one is going to win this division, because Cleveland is good, but I don't know if they're better than both of these teams when we're going down an 18-week stretch. I feel the same way about Pittsburgh, and I think whoever wins this game, we're going to see them a lot different. Like, if the Ravens win this game, they're probably going to be the favorite for the AFC North for the whole season. So I am going to go with the Ravens. I got to say, last week it wasn't just about the fact that I felt like the Browns have Joey Burrow figured out. I think it was genuinely just the Bengals are kind of collapsing in the wrong direction for me.
I think we've seen this happen a few times with some of these great teams. The Chiefs do it oftentimes early on. We saw it last year when I think they were like 2-3, and everyone was like, "Oh,
yeah, good point.
Oh no!"
Yeah.
And then Super Bowl champions. I think that the Bengals are of that similar mindset. I think that the Browns showed out. It's week 1. They came after them. They rattled them. They shut down the offensive line. They didn't know what to do. They just cut Leo Collins after they just signed him to this fairly large contract a few years ago. I'm going with the Bengals, thinking that they have to have a bounce-back game.
Yeah.
It's in front of their home team this time. It'll be a little bit better for them. There was no excuse, really, for that week 1 performance in all accounts. I mean, T. Higgins did not have a single reception that game.
On
Jamar
8 targets.
Chase, and Jamar Chase barely had anything. Only 81 passing yards were amassed. Mixon was non-existent. I do think that you just have to make a comeback from this. Zay Flowers, though, week 1 really showed out. They will have a huge task on at hand, Cincinnati. If they lose this game, I think it's not the place they want to be in. I'm not of that mindset yet.
Yeah.
But I can see. We'll come back to this moment again in week 5, and we'll see.
Put me down in 5 weeks and make me eat my words. For me, last week was a bigger problem than just Miles. I'm telling you. I feel like
Zadarius Smith was there too. Your guy Dalvin Tomlinson, both former Vikings, also.
Every play that they were running last week, it's like you can't have a team run by Joe Burrow be predictable. And this week, the Ravens' defense is a little bit worse, but the offense presents a lot more of a burst. So I'm interested to see. But I like the Ravens. This is gonna be a dogfight.
Let's see what Zach Taylor dials up. All right, moving this right along. We have the Seattle Seahawks making their way to Detroit to take on the Lions. Detroit favored this one by -5.5. Over on here 47.5. Seahawks, disappointing week 1 performance. Lions, though, riding high from that week 1. We saw Dan Campbell post-game speech. I was ready to suit up, even though he wouldn't sign me, but I was ready to suit up for him.
You could be. I could see you as like a Dan Campbell type.
Be like backup water guy. Yeah.
You like
tight end? Thank you. Yeah, even better. Yeah, that's even better.
I was gonna say just because you'd be like, I don't know, man. I'm not trying to do all that, and you'd be like, no, we just need you to hit somebody. That's it. He's that kind of coach. I will say this is the meeting of two very interesting coaches, Dan Campbell and Pete Carroll. I could picture them as guys who like go and get a beer together, but like they
go to the theater like, together for some reason, you know.
Like they don't. I don't know. They just don't strike me as like similar guys, similar coaching styles, both successful at their jobs. But the Lions, man, they're at home after beating the Super Bowl champions, and now you got the Seattle who just got a shocking divisional loss. And I will say, I like the Lions spread 5.5. They got to show out in front of their city. And I like the 47. I think that they're just going to go off this week.
I would definitely hit the over. I'm also going with the Lions. I don't like the spread, though. I think it's going to be closer. Seattle needs to make a comeback, especially in the NFC West. The Rams were a huge shock to everyone, including ourselves. 49ers are playing great. It's a tough division. They just made the playoffs last year. They have high expectations. They had 2 huge draft pickups. Expectations are high in Seattle, and they have to bounce back in this game. Even if they suffer a loss, we just need to see more than what we saw last week.
Yeah.
If we're going to see improvement upon that, I think we can feel a little bit more comfortable with Seattle and what they'll be able to do. But I'm definitely locking in Detroit on this one. Keeping this moving right along, we have the first matchup of 2 rookie quarterbacks going against one another this season. The Indianapolis Colts making their way to Houston to take on the Texans. Houston's favoring this one by -1.5, over under here with 39.5. Not a bad day for Anthony Richardson. Got his first passing touchdown and rushing touchdown all in one day.
Yeah, and he obviously, he stepped up. Everybody asked, he only played 1 season in college. What is he going to look like? He's going to have to play Trevor Lawrence twice a year for the next couple of years. He looks fantastic to me for a guy who just lost Jonathan Taylor after practicing with him all summer. Houston, though, how did you feel about their guy, C.J. Stroud? Obviously, passed his first pass attempt to himself. Joined only him and Brett Favre to do that.
Not a bad list to be on overall.
Not bad company.
No, not bad at all. Look, at the end of the day, they didn't score. He wasn't, but he moved the ball down the field, 242 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Truthfully, I think Richardson right now is probably the more dynamic one that you're a little bit worried about. Will Anderson Jr. will have his day cut out for him. Also, speaking of Richardson, if you have Rodgers in your league and you're looking for a quick pickup, maybe you're in a 12 or 14-man league, I think Richardson could be a viable pickup right there for you, especially I'm assuming Russell Wilson's probably out on the waiver wire. Maybe Kirk Cousins, but someone might have already picked him up.
In most cases, somebody drafted Anthony Richardson. Like I know I drafted Anthony Richardson just as a safety blanket, a QB2 on my team.
This is
that
why
I didn't go high.
10 carries, 40 yards, and a touchdown. That's why.
You want that. You want that out of a quarterback. If you had that out of any quarterback, you'd be just happy to get that extra point. I think he looks poised. I do like him on the road. I would have loved to see him beat Jacksonville last week. The Indianapolis Colts defense.
That was a close game.
They do look better than we think. And I think that showing up against C.J. Stroud, the Colts defense could be an interesting stream for me this week. You may not have them, but if you're questioning your defense this week.
I like it. I'm also going to go with the Colts in this one. I think that C.J. Stroud gets his first passing touchdown. Robert Woods was also a huge factor in that game. Yeah. So I hope to see him maybe as like a blanket that gets like one more final solid season in there. Under
the Houston kid, they said he's going to be getting more involved every week. So I'm excited to see him. He's a speedster.
Damian Pierce just need a little bit more from you for my fantasy team, and that would be great. But moving this right along with the Miami Dolphins making their way to New England, take on the Patriots. Miami is favored in this one, -2.5, over under here 46.5. Now look, the obvious here is to talk about what Tua and Tyreek Hill did, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
But I just don't want it to get lost that at the very beginning of the offseason, everyone's like, is Mac Jones going to be around? Is he going to start? Et cetera, et cetera. 56 pass attempts, 35 completions, 366, 3-1. Not bad considering that most people would say that the wide receiver core out there is not great. And he went up against the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's get lost in the Tua and Tyreek Hill because we're both going Miami on this one.
Yeah, we're definitely both going Miami. I'm going to go Miami spread. I think that it's New England this year. I just want to say it. The formula is they have the hardest schedule. Everyone's doubting them. Their defense is better than we think, and none of it matters. Like they could come out and win this game, but I could genuinely see them just getting losing the game because it's one of their harder scheduled ones. But they have the pieces not like Miami. They have the boring pieces. You know what I'm saying? Miami has the speedster receivers. But New England they just run the ball. They have the good defense.
It's not pretty.
If they can slow down Miami, then they have
keep the offense off the field.
But how can they do that with Tua throwing 466 yards last week?
You throw 366 right back again somehow, and you hope for the best. Because look, at the end of the day, they still give up 34 points and a ton of yards to Herbert. I think we have it somewhere in here what he threw.
I think he threw 226 last week against.
That's.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not great.
Well, his team ran for 40 attempts.
So they're able to run the ball. We saw.
We
saw they still ran the ball a lot. The Patriots. There's a method here. It's not going to be fun because Tyreek Hill can score like that, and this offense can score in 2 seconds. But there's a way here.
Gonzalez, you have your work cut out for you.
Yeah, big time this week. All right, let's keep it moving. We have our 2 games of the week, and our first one is the Kansas City Chiefs making their way to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Kansas City is favored this by -3. Over under here 51.5. Now this was a playoff game last year in which the Jaguars lost in Kansas City.
Yeah,
and you saw Zay Jones walk up to Trevor Lawrence and say, "It's okay, we'll be right back here next year." So, how do you think they're going to do in this one?
Yeah, well, I just want to bring up Zay Jones making that crazy acrobat catch last week. He's like, don't forget about me with Calvin Ridley doing all this stuff. But, I mean, Kansas City has been at the top of the AFC mountain for the last couple of years, and Jacksonville was at the bottom. And now they've built this team around Trevor Lawrence. The defense looks good. They're trying to go back to the playoffs. They're the favorites in their division. They're at home in this one. They got KC coming off a loss. But I still feel like I gotta pick KC, and I don't know why. Like, am I wrong? What do I do, Sean? I don't know, because I'm like, it's a crazy. How do I bet against Kansas City again?
No, I think that there's a logic there. Jaguars didn't play great against the Colts the way we expected to. I mean, they ended up winning by a big margin, but there was a point in the game where a better team like Kansas City could make a comeback and win against them. They just got Chris Jones back. Kansas City signed his 1-year, $25 million contract. Huge. Similar to what Danielle Hunter did in Minnesota. They're doing something similar there. Give him the big one, then figure it out next offseason. It's like, we're just going to push this off a year. Just please don't leave. So there's a method here. I'm in Jacksonville's camp, though. I think for me, they're at home. Kelsey's out. They have a balanced offense. Tank Bigsby was involved. He had the fumble, which was brutal. Travis Etienne was running the ball pretty well. The wide receivers of Trevor Lawrence were all getting hit. They were Zay Jones catch. Calvin Ridley was involved, got a touchdown. The few interceptions that did happen, the one interception that happened, that was rough. But I think it's all Trevor Lawrence. I think that this is their game for sure. They're at home. The fans will be there. They've got a huge win. They're going to go 2-0 in this division. This is their division to lose, Jacksonville. And if you're able to beat the Chiefs, it can give you so much confidence what you guys can do for the rest of the season.
It's just crazy because in my head, I can't picture myself making Kansas City and the Bengals both 0-2 at the end of like these scenarios I'm presenting today. But I gotta say, I kind of, you sold me there. I think I'm gonna go with Jacksonville.
Oh, now you changed your mind. All right.
I think the spread at least the spread, because
I like the spread. I like the over
City
here
by 3. See, it seems like one of those things where they're gonna have to go for a 2-point conversion to keep up, because I genuinely think Jacksonville's offense. I don't want to say it, but like Jacksonville's offense may be better than Kansas City's offense right now.
Look, I'll hit the over.
With Kelsey out.
Maybe as long as the wide receivers of Kansas City aren't eating Butterfingers before, they're fine, and then they'll be good. But I'll also hit the over on this one.
Been a while,
Kansas City scored 21 points last week. Jacksonville scored 31. That's 52.
Yep.
That's more than 51. So there you go. Hit the over. All right, moving on to our last game of the week. San Francisco 49ers making their way to LA to take on the Rams. 49ers favoring this one -8, over under here at 44.5. Obviously, 49ers blanketed the Steelers last week.
Blanketed. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Not like the Cowboys did the Giants. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say by the time that San Francisco, despite the fact that their defense was unreal, their offense had accumulated like 200 yards in like a quarter and a half. And they held the Steelers to 1 yard at one point, and like to that point where they had 200. And I find that just to be an unbelievably balanced team. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is fully healthy and back, so nobody's worried about that right now. Had led the entire league last week with carries, 22 carries. Low receiving numbers, but I mean, when you have 152 yards on the ground, nobody's going to ask you to do too much. And I mean, your guy Brandon Ayuk, he decided to go a little off last week.
If you watch the videos in the offseason, I talked about Ayuk. I said he's been a pretty favorite, And it showed out one more time. Now, it's probably people are like, well, this is a -8 spread. Why would you put in the game of the week? The Rams played really, really well last week, despite not having Cooper Kupp, despite everyone coming back from injuries, not having Jalen Ramsey anymore. Aaron Donald. I don't know if you guys saw the clip. You can find it on the NFL. You can find it on the NFL Instagram.
Poor Geno.
It's Geno Smith going, "Oh my God!" Right as Aaron Donald is coming right at him. So I think that this is going to be a better matchup than people anticipate. Yeah. I am taking the 49ers in this one. They are what I think all teams want to be. It's this perfect balance of everything. They're passing the ball really well. They're running the ball really well. Their defense is stopping the run. Their defense is stopping the pass. And their special teams is all there.
Yeah.
It's just everything that you want out of a team. And it doesn't matter the quarterback. As long as Kyle Shanahan is leading it, it seems like they're always going to do well. It's very similar to what Andy Reid is doing in Kansas City, minus the fact that Andy Reid actually wins Super Bowls.
Yeah, that's a good point there.
Yeah, but to me, this will be a closer game. I am going the 49ers.
I think that last week, what the huge thing that when I was looking over the stats really was Brock Purdy has won every regular season game that he's played, all 6 of them, and he's thrown 2 touchdowns in every game. He's the only quarterback ever to do that. I think that when you're talking about that kind of efficiency, it's talking about a guy who's more than a game manager. He knows he can't do much with his legs, but he gets everything done. He makes all the throws. Ayuk, Kittle, we talk about all these guys every week, but the way that he's able to use them, I think that is going to come in handy. We saw LA's defense at times. Their front 7 looks fine. Their defensive secondary does not look great, and I think that if San Francisco can get a couple of deep balls on them, it's going to be a good one. I really do think they're going to be dumping off to McCaffrey a lot. Like I like McCaffrey catches for sure this week, but Puka, the new receiver, whilst they lost Cooper Kupp and they got Puka, and Puka's just killing it.
He's balling out.
But I like San Francisco. I like them just straight up here. I think that 44.5. I think these teams know each other well enough to score on each other. I don't think that San Francisco is going to do what they did to Pittsburgh last week to LA, but it's very possible without Cooper Kupp out. It really we have to see, is the Seattle defense just that bad, or is Matthew Stafford just back and healthy, because we saw him play injured all year last year. But
also, how good is the 49ers defense or is the Steelers offense? I mean, obviously they're really good. But I mean, or was it also just the Pittsburgh Steelers week 1 got rattled and that defense just overperformed?
It was definitely the point too where, even Kenny Pickett looked fine. It just seemed like they couldn't get anything moving. But then you have Nick Bosa, now that he got paid, playing 100% of defensive snaps. Like if I'm Stafford, that terrifies me.
Yeah. So is Aaron Donald though.
Aaron Donald, same thing. Brock Purdy, when you bring it up like that, who would I rather be Brock Purdy against Aaron Donald, or would you rather be Stafford against Bosa?
I'll be the water guy.
You don't want to be any of this.
I don't want to get hit by any of them.
I'm just saying, it's like this is what you play a game where you have a good quarterback and a good pass rusher on both teams. And this is not the first time we're going to see these guys play each other this season.
No, not at all. All right, that is all the time that we had. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, we have a double header Monday Night Football coming your way. First one of the season. There will be a few, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, stay tuned. Like Sean said, Monday double header coming at you. Stay tuned for our game picks. If you missed it, if you got this video, want to relive it, go back on our Just Saying page as well. Just Saying Football on YouTube and Spotify, and stay updated with everything on Instagram. Just Saying with no G, WJS.
Enjoy.